Reena Ismat. She's a dynamic and a passionate interior design professional who has graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in interior design from the Robert Bush School of Design, Keene University, USA. She has more than 8 years of experience in the interior design, planning, and construction industry. She began her career in India as a junior interior designer and then proceeded to Dubai, where she worked as a senior interior designer at Max Square, a Dubai-based interior design consultancy company between the years 2011 to 2012. She's designed, renovated, refurbished, and incepted ideas for an elite private clientele in the Gulf and procured mid-scale to large-scale projects and even luxury interior projects at the Burj Khalifa.
Hi guys, welcome to the UGC lecture in architecture series. We're going to be talking about interior design now. In the previous lecture, you must have got a brief introduction to interior design, the definition, the vocabulary, principles, elements, and the different typologies of interior design. Now we're going to be looking into the interior design process, what involves in interior design concept designing, and also the different themes and styles of interior design. Alright, so let's get started. So these are the theoretical and practical definitions that you've already seen in the previous episode. Now we're going to be looking at the interior design process. Interior design has a specific process that we follow in order for us to execute it. Any given design starts off from research, development, and then it proceeds further. In interior design, we've actually defined it in specific stages per se. The first step is, as always, for all architects and interior designers, is site survey and documentation. It's very important that you survey your site, document it, photograph it, and study all your physical constraints, technical constraints, and structural constraints in any given space. Once you do that, you can come back and do your research and development on the specific usage. For example, in the previous lecture, you must have heard about the different typologies of interior design. If you are talking about a hospitality industry and it's a hotel that you are going to be renovating or doing the interior design for, it's very important that you study what are the structural and technical requirements of any given hotel. You need to study movement. You need to study how people move around the given spaces. What are the different service activities that go on in a particular hotel setting? What are the different timings, etc. So there's a lot of research and development that goes into designing before we even start doing a concept design for any given space. So once you do the research and development and you do the site survey, you will be able to better understand what it is we need to do in order to enhance the space and make it look better. So once you do that, then you have to do a case study analysis. A case study analysis is typically studying how other successful interiors of the same genre has been executed. Once you do the case study analysis, you pretty much know where you're going and what you're going to do. Your next stage is concept design, brainstorming, and perspective sketching. Any design comes from an idea, and it's very important that you need this idea to be absolutely unique in its given sense. Creative concept brainstorming is using the principles and elements of design that you must have seen in the previous episode and evolving those into a design that you have custom made for this particular setting. And given the period of design, given the style of interior design you select, you might have to do research and do the design accordingly, starting from walls to ceilings to flooring to furniture, fabrics, equipment. Everything plays a very important role in any interior setting. So coming up with concept designs for all of these elements is equally important, because each of these elements make up the complete overall interior of any given space. So that's quite important. And next is your spatial planning and zoning. As much as you do in design and have multiple ideas, you should never quite lose track of what is important, which is the function of the given space. And you might have a specific functional requirement for all of these places, and therefore you need to plan the spatial requirements accordingly. So you have zoning to do. You need to understand the movement of people within the space. You've got a specific transition from foyer to living to dining, kitchen, servant zones, served zones, private zones. So it's very important, first of all, to segregate the categories into private, semi-private and public. You also need to categorize zones into servant zones and served zones. See, servant zones basically talk about areas that contribute towards the served zones. So you're talking about a kitchen where something will be prepared, and the dining will be a served zone where prepared item is going to be showcased in the dining area. So that's what a servant and served space is. So when you do zoning, it's very important that you plan the movement of people from servant zones and served zones so that there is no clash between these two people's pathways. Similarly, a lot of people think spatial planning is through floor plans. I believe that spatial planning is not only done with floor plans, but also in elevations. When you see a residence or an office in a sectional view, seeing the movement and the experience of a person in that angle is something that you can relate to much more. When you'll be standing in a specific space and you're looking at a balcony, you can better understand the height of the space and the scale of things within that space. So not only is planning in floor plans important, but also planning in elevation is very important. So you will be doing your spatial planning, zoning, transitioning, everything together, and all of this needs to flow with your concept design and the theme that you're going to be setting for the given interior. After which, it's very important that you need to come to mood boards and concept presentation. Any idea needs to be sold. That's what my ideology is. So I believe that you need to be able to justify any given reason as to why you have done such a design. You have your requirements, which will be given to you by your clients or the end user. You've got your functional constraints, you've got your structural constraints, you're working with a budget, and there are many factors that are affecting your design. But in spite of all this, if you have a good design, it means that it has fulfilled each and every one of these aspects that have been constraints to you while you're doing the design. So any good design will make sure that it completely satisfies functional requirements, aesthetic requirements, and your material requirements, that the materials you've used, the colors you've used are all not only within the budget, but something that is durable, that is of good quality, and is sustainable. The next part is 3D visualization and modeling. Any design needs to be visualized. Not everybody can see design the way you do. So it's very important that you either do concept design sketching, or you do 3D models in 3ds Max or Rhino or Lumion or any given 3D developing software, BIM softwares that you can develop these models into. Once you do the models, you can probably add color and material to it to make the end user understand what your ideas are actually evolving into. Apart from which, there is a traditional methodology, which is classical model making. You use your different boards, cutting boards and plexiglass, and you're going to cut up and glue it and make a model of whatever it is you're designing, where you can actually do daylight studies. You will be able to put it out in the sun and see how the natural light and artificial light aspect of any given space is working, which is very key to your interiors. Once you understand, while you visualize your 3Ds, you'll be able to see your designs come to life. You're going to see it with color, you're going to see it with the materials, and you also get to see it with artificial light and with daylight. Seeing those designs at that point actually brings about a lot of changes, because some things might not seem the way you actually imagined it to be, and you will learn to understand why that happened. And at that point, you might be revising and evolving your design a little bit to better suit the interiors that you're designing. That is a very key point where we will be starting to look at color and lighting. Color and lighting are some of the most important factors in interior design. It literally has the power to control a person's emotions. You can win an audience just by subtle lighting, sound, and color. Similarly, you can attract a person a few 100 feet away just by the types of signages you use, the color of the signage, and the message that it gives. And I specifically say message because colors tend to depict messages. There's always an emotion that follows a color. So there are different colors, and probably later down in other episodes we will be covering color and light more in depth, where we will talk to you about the separate colors and what message and emotion each color notifies. But for now, what's important is, after visualizing any interior in 3D, you get to study the color and the lighting aspect, make the necessary adjustments, and move forth. Once you're done with the color and lighting, you've pretty much nailed it. Your design has come out successfully and you're pretty happy. But now you need to come down to the actual materials that you're going to be using in order to successfully execute your project. So then you're going to have to select materials and prepare spec sheets, which means you need to specify what comes on top of every surface, inside every surface, how thick it is, how durable it is it waterproof, or is it MDF, is it plywood, is it glass, is it lacquered glass, you're talking about gypsum, calcium silicate. There are hundreds of materials out there that you would be facing on a day-to-day basis while doing interior design. So it's very important to specify these materials during your design period in order for your design to be both successful, not only visually and aesthetically, but also on a long term. The next part is your project presentation, which is part and parcel of every real life practical interior design project. Not only do you have to design, you have to present it, and whoever your client is, in whichever typology of design, you're going to have to impress them and sell the product, which means, like I said, it should consider and it should fulfill the three aspects that we spoke about: functionality, aesthetics, and sustainability. All these three have to be covered. Once that's done and you've selected all your finishes, then you move to detailed design. See, any design that we do as human beings, we need to make sure that these have been engineered properly. Any given furniture that you've designed, custom designed, might look absolutely beautiful, but we need to study how the ergonomics of that product is, whether it's a comfortable product, whether the product can be used on a long term, whether it can bear a set amount of weight, whether it can be used in the given space, whether the material used to make it does not get spoiled over time, and that it's something that is durable and lasts a long time. So engineering a specific product is part and parcel of any interior designer's job. Whether it's a window, whether it's a door, your designs have to be practical, they have to be ergonomic, and they also have to look aesthetically beautiful. So it's very important that whatever you design, you do the detail for that design and engineer it accurately. So this refers not only to interior elements given in any interior design, but also to whatever comes on the walls and the ceilings and the floor. So you'll have to create detailed drawings like RCPs, which are reflected ceiling plans. You'll have to create electrical layouts, you'll have to create plumbing layouts, you'll have to create flooring layouts that depict how the tiles are being laid in the floor, which can be done in hundreds of manners. So there are quite a bit of detailed drawings that support any given interior design in order for it to be executed successfully. Once that's done, you enter product estimation, BOQs, which tends to sound really boring, but it's very key in any given interior design scenario where everything boils down to a budget. So whether it's your client or whether it's yourself, you need to make sure that whatever you're designing is falling within the budgetary constraint that you have for that given project. And there always is a budget. No matter how big the project or how small the project, there always is a budget. So it's very important that you do a product estimation and you prepare a proper BOQ, which is bill of quantity. So you need to make sure that the amount of product needed is calculated. You prepare the line items for the complete BOQ, and that you will then calculate the costing of every single product multiplied by the quantity required, and it gives you how much each and every product in your given interior is going to cost you, which gives you a pretty good idea as to how much money it takes to make about a specific aesthetically beautiful looking space. After you do that, you have to do scheduling. Scheduling is something that is more pertaining to people who are working practically. So you probably wouldn't be doing this in college, but people who do interior design for real life projects, we need to do project scheduling, which means you forecast a timeline for the given amount of work on site, whether it's laying tiles, whether it is civil work, whether it's demolition. You need to put a schedule to kind of give you a picture of how long the execution is going to take, all right, and at what stages it's going to come. So there is a specific order that everything is done in, all right. After which you have project management. A lot of people don't realize that project management also falls under the interior designer scope, but it very much is. Project management involves you actually going to site, observing the work that's being done by the masons and the electricians and the plumbers, and making sure that it is being executed exactly the way that you intended it to be. Otherwise, your drawings are free to be interpreted in any different way. So managing the project and making sure that execution is going not only on schedule but as per the specification you gave is extremely important in any given project. And the final is execution and handover. So once your project is done, you pretty much are going to be buying accessories, filling it up with all the candles and the carpets and your wall frames and paintings, and you're going to make sure that aesthetically you've given the final touch to any given interior. So this pretty much covers the interior design process and the different stages. We will be looking into each and every stage in detail in the future. But for now, for you guys to quickly remember how the whole process works, it starts off with learning, which is your site surveys, your research and development, and your inputs from your end user, your clients. After which you brainstorm, which is your concept designing phase. Brainstorming is very important. After you do concept design brainstorming and come up with an idea, it's important that that idea is designed and planned spatially, ergonomically, to understand how it works, and then it should be visualized. And after you visualize it in 3D, you might yourself change a lot of things, from colors to lighting, because things do not quite come out the way you expected it to be. Once that's done, you basically have evolved your design from what it was initially. And this cycle sometimes keeps going round and round until you perfect your design and your client is extremely happy. Once that's done, it moves to engineering perfectly in order for it to be executed, and the final stage is execution. So this is your basic overview of the different stages. A lot of people ask me, what is an interior design concept? So the written description of a concept tries to be the embodiment of an actual experience people will feel when they enter a space. So there's no perfect way of communicating this with you, but to begin with, we can say a concept is an idea, a formation of something that will eventually drive an actionable reality within the interior that allows the activities of the project to take place. To understand the conceptual way of thinking, which is about ideas and how they are formulated, it requires that you move out of your comfort zone. It requires new thinking and willingness to empty the old cupboard of preconceptions. So forget your Googles and forget the images that you've seen. You need to have a blank paper. The major themes are the 7 concepts of planning, circulation, 3D, construction, materials, color, and lighting. These things pretty much affect your design massively, all right? And this pretty much covers the entire spectrum of the designer's activity while he's doing actual design. Each of these concepts will eventually drive the grand concept of any given interior, all right? What we're going to do next is we're going to look at a sample of interior design concepts. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how a specific interior concept is going to work. So for example, the idea starts from a given block. So we have a block here, and this is something that you're going to gain inspiration from. A lot of people might think this is just a box, or there's something inside it, or maybe it's a chair or a table. Perspectives vary. Everybody sees things differently. This can be evolved into something. So if I were to gain inspiration from this particular object and design something as a concept, I'm going to derive this into multiple ways. I can choose to blast this into multiple faces. All right, so you've got your 5 fascias, and you can choose to explode this and use it in a different manner. So this concept might come to be. All right, now what this looks like to you in this sketch is probably a bunch of boxes that has been exploded and put variably in a different array of patterns. We've used design elements such as line, form, and we've moved it, we've decreased the shapes, we've increased the shapes, and we've used different elements to kind of depict a specific arrangement of squares. Now this can become into a TV panel. So here you go, you've got one storage element here, you've got another storage element here, and you've got a ledge connected to another box and another one in the bottom. This could be viewed to be storage elements. This could become a ledge. How you play about each concept, how you develop it, and how you come about these ideas plays a very important role in how your design turns out to be. So I've used nothing but a cube to derive into a pattern that has turned out to work out to be something of a TV unit. For me, it can be a storage unit, it could be a study table. I could probably add a chair here, and there you go. What you're seeing is a proper study table in a given setting. So I hope that pretty much helps you understand how concept design brainstorming works. You gain inspiration from something specific, and then you interpret it in whichever way you want to. You use principles of design like you were familiar with in the previous episode: lines, forms, different shapes, different sizes, and you've used it to come up with a very unique design of a study table or a TV unit. So I hope that pretty much helps you guys understand that concept design is something that evolves itself and develops without any constraints, any mind constraints that you have. Think outside the box. Anything can become anything. All right, so that's pretty much the concept. A lot of people might ask me, in interior design, what are the physical components of interior design? So the physical components of interior design are basically everything that composes your interiors. It is what defines the feel you create in any living space. From the wall to the ceiling, every detail that comprises of your interior is a key component to your design concept. So we're talking about walls, floors, ceilings, the kind of treatments you do in the ceilings, whether you do a false ceiling, whether you're doing a carving, whether you're doing a coffered ceiling, it makes a big difference. Flooring, whether you're using hard flooring, whether you use glossy flooring, marble, you're using vitrified tiles, ceramic tiles, whatever it is. There are different materials that can be used, but each will give its own specific effect in the end of the day. We're talking about windows. I mean, there are different types of windows. Windows too play a very important part of your interior because they literally frame what it is that is there outside that works with your inside space. Lighting, doors, furniture, fabrics, upholstery, artworks, paintings, and decor accessories, carpets, natural elements. When I'm talking about natural elements, I mean plants. So now we're going to look at interior design themes and styles. As much as, you know, a concept is derived from inspiration, people often wonder, where do we get these inspiration from? Well, all along since the beginning of time, we've had people do interiors in different settings, and these have inspired people to come up with different styles of interior design in different periods of history. We will be studying history of interior design in depth later, but to give you a preview of what we're going to start studying, interior design styles, I'm going to start talking about a few. First is the American colonial style. It focuses on function and practicality, very popular, out of which you have around 3 subdivisions: Southwestern, Shaker style, and Patriotic style. Then we look at the arts and crafts movement, a very significant movement in history, where between the 1860 and 1910, a group of designers and writers from England, UK, produced high quality, very well made handcrafted goods, which were quite costly to begin with, but this started off a movement of interior design that was inspired by the arts and crafts industry. Next is Art Nouveau, which is from 1880 to around 1910. It was in full swing and is pretty much known to be the first 20th century modern style, as it was the first style to look into life and the surrounding world instead of backwards in history. So rather than getting inspiration from history, it was avant-garde. It was absolutely new. It was a new concept in history. And a lot of people tend to confuse Art Nouveau with Art Deco, which is quite different. Art Deco interior design represents a period between 1908 through 1935. This style particularly began in Paris and began working its way through Europe and then globally also. Apart from which, we have next Arabian styles. Arabian interior design is a magnificent blend of color, pattern, and personality. They derive their inspiration a lot from geometric shapes and organic forms. It encompasses the rich vibrancy of tones found in the desert, with extremely complex geometrical patterns and designs that tend to be depicted in fabrics and wall panels, etc. Asian interior design reflects materials and finishes from the East, and in the East they typically tend to use a lot of their way of life in interior design. So a lot of feng shui, a lot of good energy, negative energy. So this tends to be depicted in the style of interior design itself, and it's very, very practical. So based on how their movement is and their usage of any spaces, they design it accordingly. Next is transitional. Every era needs a mix of, that's what this is, mixing the classical into the contemporary. Transitional interior design takes inspiration from classical furniture and design elements, straighten the curves, simplify the complex patterns, add a dash of color, and there you go. Here's transitional interior design. Contemporary interior design became popular in America in the 50s and early 60s. The look has either straight lines or beautifully curved. Literally, this style reflects to what is current, what is happening, and it reflects pretty much the styles that are very fashionable. So it had very much a lot to do with the fashion industry also. French interior design is fairly classical. It derives its roots from the Renaissance period. It is both sophisticated and elegant, sometimes known as over-opulent or dramatic. It has a lot of motifs depicting a lot of stories. Gothic interior design, one word that I recall when I think about this is Antonio Gaudi. So when I think about Gothic interior design, I'm transported fully into another world, a world of time. Life in the Middle Ages was very different to our modern world, and therefore the blend of this period with some modern influences can be extremely interesting. The next is Indian. Indian interior design styles, warm and earthy, have a lot to do with the way of life that was being lived. A lot of vastu has been involved, a lot of air circulation based on the weather of the country has also been incorporated into the design styles to have more air, more wind, and be more comfortable. A lot of the colors inspired from religion also is used. So we have an exotic appeal and hold sort of a magical look with the use of harmonized colors. Then we have industrial and high-tech interior design. This is a combination of art and engineering. So pretty much a lot of gadgets, a lot of metal, and a lot of glass. Italian interior design is modern and has a look of luxury about it. You name it and the luxury product is usually from Italy. whether it's glass, whether it's crystals, whether it's chandeliers. Armani, Scarpa, Ettore Sottsass, these are all designers, are from Italy and have pretty much produced some of the most trend-setting products and interiors in the world. Japanese interior design is very simplistic, very minimalist, and pretty streamlined in both layout and finishes. Then we're going to look at medieval interior design, which comes from the period in European history, 1000 BC to 1550. This concept is basic and not too far away from rustic interior design. Minimalism, which is pretty much what's going on these days around in town, is certainly chic when put together well. Clean lines, straight surfaces, geometric shapes, very simplistic neutral tones, not much of color, very simple and basic. Then we're going to look at Moroccan interiors. Moroccan look is rich in spice and colors, influenced by the Spanish movement, French and Arabic interior design. Beautiful patterns fill spaces along with colorful textures and aromas. Nautical interior design is very much influenced by the shipping industry, by seaside and beachfront residences. Think New Hampshire and you would be right on track. Retro interior design covers 3 decades. 50s, 60s and 70s. The look is varied and the influences were the boom of advertising, flower power, pop music and pop art. From the 1950s to the 1970s, even famous TV shows have also inspired interior design themes from this period, like That 70s Show. You've seen it and I've seen it too. So rustic interiors, to achieve a rustic home interior design, pretty much don't finish any product completely. We're not looking at something that's finely done, that's been polished. We're actually looking at unrefined elements. All right, so that pretty much a lot of wood, traditional log house, cabins in the woods, that pretty much talks about what rustic interior design feels like. Then we have Scandinavian interiors, Spanish interiors, Tuscan interiors, which originates from Tuscany in Italy, and it pretty much embodies the calm, serene nature of the Italian countryside. We've got the Victorian era from 1837 to 1901 that saw many great changes within homes, since mass production meant that goods became more affordable. So a lot of people wanted to show off, and so you've got a lot of plump cushions, excessive ornamentation that gave way to this style. We're then looking at vintage style, very famous amongst women actually, refers to the 1940s and early 50s. It is an era that most people remember either from their own childhood or from home. So vintage is wonderfully nostalgic, you can say, and very comforting for a family home. So it's more recently known as shabby chic, a little messy and a lot of fabric, and there you go. Zen interior design is based on Zen principles of light, space and function when applied to a given home to give you a more relaxed and peaceful state of mind. The approach is minimalistic and uses the bare essentials within a home, and each item has its own purpose. The best colors to build your look upon are earthy tones that are warm and uplifting. So that pretty much covers the overall important periods and eras of interior design themes and styles. However, there are much more to look at in depth, which we will be studying during the history of interior design course. To summarize what you have learned in this particular unit, we're going to basically, you've had an introduction of what interior design is, what the definition is, you've seen the principles and elements of design, you've studied the different typologies of interior design and their respective functions. I've explained the different stages of interior design to you and how those different stages are very important for a complete and successful interior design. We've also talked about the process, the design concept, how to come up with an interior design concept for a given space, and also about what are the different themes and styles of interior design. You might have quite a fefew questions on these. The usual FAQs are, how relevant is it to study interior design? What are the 3 essential criterias? What are the different principles of interior design? What are the different steps involved in interior design and why it is important to go through these stages? A lot of people do ask me, how do I come up with a successful interior design concept? So that pretty much has to do with concept design brainstorming. Then we look at how you ensure that you can follow a specific style of interior design, and why it is important to always have a concept, how we can fuse different styles together, and whether you can invent your own style. All right. So thank you very much for listening to this episode. We will be addressing the history of interior design and other subjects pertaining to interior design in furthermore episodes. Thank you for your time.